The alarms screamed through the ship like wounded animals. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The crew of the Dauntless grabbed on the walls and chairs as their vessel shook violently. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge with her feet planted firmly on the metal floor. She watched the view screen as stars twisted and bent around them. Something had gone wrong with the jump drive. Very wrong. "Report," she said. Her voice was calm. It was always calm. Do-Hwan, her chief engineer, looked up from his console. His face was pale and covered in sweat. "Captain, the navigation computer made an error. A big one. We translated into the wrong sector." "Which sector?" Do-Hwan swallowed hard. "Valoran space." The bridge went silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing. They all knew what Valoran space meant. The Valoran Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. No one entered their territory without permission. Those who did were never seen again. June, the tactical officer, was the first to speak. "Captain, I am detecting 12 vessels approaching our position. They are Valoran destroyers. They will reach us in 4 minutes." Yuna looked at the view screen. She could see them now. The Valoran ships were long and black, shaped like spears. Each one was 5 times larger than the Dauntless. Weapons covered their hulls like thorns on a dark flower. "Can we jump again?" Yuna asked. Do-Hwan shook his head. "The drive needs at least 2 hours to recharge. We are stuck here. Can we run?" June checked her screens. "Their ships are faster than ours. They would catch us in minutes." Yuna nodded slowly. She had expected these answers. She walked to the center of the bridge and looked at her crew. There were 12 people on the bridge and 35 more throughout the ship. 47 humans in total, alone in enemy territory, facing an empire that had never known defeat. "Listen to me," she said. "We are not going to panic. We are not going to beg. We are going to stand here and see what happens." Tai-hee, the medical officer, stepped forward. She was a small woman with short hair and steady hands. "Captain, the Valorans do not negotiate. They only take prisoners or kill. Those are the only options." "Those are the options they have given others," Yuna said. "We are going to give them a new option." Before anyone could respond, the communication console beeped. A message was coming from the Valoran fleet. "Put it through," Yuna ordered. The view screen changed. A face appeared, and it was not human. The Valoran had pale gray skin that looked like stone. 4 arms extended from his wide shoulders. His eyes were compound, like an insect's, made of hundreds of tiny lenses that reflected the light. He wore armor the color of dried blood. "Unknown vessel," the Valoran spoke. His voice was deep and cold. "I am High Warden Tyvos of the Valoran Imperial Fleet. You have crossed into sacred territory without permission. This is a crime punishable by death or servitude. You will power down your engines and prepare for boarding. You will not resist. If you resist, you will be destroyed. You have no other choice." Yuna stepped forward so the camera could see her clearly. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive. She was just a human woman in a gray uniform, standing on a small ship surrounded by giants. "High Warden Tyvos," she said. "I am Captain Yuna of the Earth vessel Dauntless. We entered your space by accident due to a navigation error. We mean no disrespect to your empire." Tyvos leaned closer to his own camera. His compound eyes studied her with obvious curiosity. "You are a species we have not encountered before. What are you?" "We are human. We come from a planet called Earth in a system far from here." "Human," Tyvos repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. "You are small. You look weak. Why do you not tremble before me, human?" Do you not understand what will happen to you? Yuna felt her heart beating fast in her chest. She could feel the fear trying to crawl up her spine. But she had learned long ago how to keep fear locked in a box inside her mind. Fear was useful, but only if you controlled it. If it controlled you, you were already dead. I understand perfectly, she said. You have 12 destroyers. We have 1 exploration vessel. You could destroy us in seconds. But destroying us would teach you nothing. We are the first humans you have ever met. We represent a species you know nothing about. Is the Valoran Empire so afraid of small pink creatures that it cannot even talk to them first? Tyvos made a sound that might have been a laugh. You dare to mock the Empire? I dare to request a conversation. Nothing more. Is the mighty Valoran Empire afraid of words? The bridge crew stared at their captain. Dohwan looked like he might faint. June had stopped breathing. Tihi gripped the edge of her console so hard her knuckles turned white. Tyvos was silent for a long moment. His compound eyes moved across Yuna's face, studying every detail. In 3,000 years, no one had ever spoken to him like this. Prisoners begged. Enemies threatened. But this small creature simply stood there and asked for dialogue as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. You are either very brave or very foolish, Tyvos finally said. My people have a saying, Yuna replied. Those are often the same thing. Another long pause. The Valoran warships held their position, weapons still pointed at the Dauntless. One command from Tyvos would turn the human vessel into dust and fire. Very well, human captain, Tyvos said. You will have your conversation. But if you waste my time, if you try to deceive me, if you do anything I find unacceptable, I will kill every living thing on your ship and harvest your vessel for scrap. Do you understand? I understand. Then prepare yourself. We will speak again in 1 cycle. The screen went black. Yuna released a breath she did not know she had been holding. She turned to face her crew. They were all staring at her with wide eyes and open mouths. Well, she said with a small smile. That went better than expected. Better? Dohan nearly shouted. Captain, you just insulted the commander of a Valoran fleet. No, I got his attention. There is a difference. Yuna straightened her uniform. We have 1 cycle. Let us use it wisely. Everyone, back to your stations. We have work to do. The crew hesitated for only a moment. Then they moved. They did not know what their captain was planning, but they trusted her. And right now, trust was all they had. The Dauntless floated in the darkness of space like a small fish surrounded by sharks. The 12 Valoran destroyers had formed a perfect circle around the human vessel. Their weapons were powered and ready. Their sensors watched every movement on the ship. Inside the Dauntless, the crew worked in tense silence. 1 cycle. That was all the time they had before Tyvos would contact them again. 1 cycle to prepare for something none of them truly understood. Yuna sat in her ready room, a small office connected to the bridge. She stared at her desk, at the photograph she kept there. Her grandmother's face looked back at her from one of the frames. The old woman had died 10 years ago, but Yuna still remembered her stories that her grandmother had survived a terrible war on Earth. Bombs had fallen on her city. Fire had consumed everything. She had lost her parents, her siblings, her home. She had walked through ruins with nothing but the clothes on her back and the determination to keep breathing. You come from survivors, her grandmother had told her once. Never forget that. No matter how dark things get, we survive. We rebuild. We continue. Yuna touched the photograph gently. I could use your advice right now, grandmother, she whispered. The door chimed. Enter, Yuna said. Doan stepped inside. His face was still pale, but he looked calmer now. He carried a datapad in his hands. Captain, I have finished the calculations you requested. The scuttling charges? Yes. Dowan handed her the pad. I have reprogrammed them. If you give the order, the antimatter core will overload. The explosion will destroy the Dauntless completely. Nothing will remain for the Valorans to study or take. Yuna looked at the numbers on the screen. Her ship, her home for the past 3 years. She could destroy it with a single command. How fast? She asked. 3 seconds from your order. Not enough time for anyone to escape, including us. Good. Dowan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Captain, I need to ask. Do you really think it will come to that? Yuna set down the pad. I do not know, Dowan. But I know this. I will not let our people become slaves. I will not let the Valorans take our technology and use it against Earth. If the choice is between submission and death, we choose death. And we make that choice on our own terms. Dowan was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. The crew understands too. We talked about it while you were in here. Everyone agrees. We would rather die free than live as prisoners. Yuna felt a warmth spread through her chest. Pride, perhaps. Or love for these brave people who followed her into the unknown. Thank you, Dowan. That means more than you know. On the bridge, June studied the Valoran ships with focused intensity. She had been a soldier before becoming a tactical officer. She knew how to read enemy positions, how to find weaknesses in formations. But these Valoran vessels showed no weakness at all. Thought their shields were powerful. Their weapons were advanced. Their numbers were overwhelming. In a straight fight, the Dauntless would last approximately 47 seconds. June had calculated it 3 times, hoping she was wrong. She was not wrong. Taihe moved through the ship, checking on the crew. As medical officer, her job was to care for bodies. But today, she cared for minds instead. She stopped in the engine room, where the youngest members of the crew worked. A young man named Hyan looked up at her approach. He was only 22 years old, fresh from the academy. His hands were shaking. Doctor, he said, are we going to die? Taihe sat down next to him. I do not know, Hyan. Maybe. But I do know that Captain Yuna has never failed us before. She brought us through the asteroid storm at Proxima. She negotiated peace with the Kethrani traders. She always finds a way. But the Valorans are different. They have never been beaten. Neither had the British Empire. Neither had the Mongol horde. Neither had dozens of powerful forces throughout human history. And yet, here we are. Taihe placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. We are still here, Hyan. We are always still here. The hours passed slowly. The crew ate their meals in silence. Some wrote messages to their families, recordings that might never be delivered. Others simply sat at their stations and waited. Yuna spent the time studying everything humanity knew about the Valoran Empire. It was not much. The empire had existed for 3,000 years. They had conquered 43 species and claimed over 200 worlds. Their technology was advanced, their military was unstoppable, and their culture valued strength above all else. The weak served the strong. That was their most basic law. Those who could not fight became slaves. Those who would not fight became examples. But Yuna noticed something interesting in the records. The Valorans had never encountered a species that refused to submit. Every species they faced either fought and lost or surrendered and begged for mercy. No one had ever simply stood their ground and demanded respect. Perhaps that was the key. Perhaps the Valorans did not know how to deal with something truly new. The communication console beeped. The cycle was ending. Captain to the bridge, June announced. Yuna straightened her uniform one last time. She looked at her grandmother's photograph. Then she walked to the bridge. Tyvos appeared on the view screen. His compound eyes gleamed with cold interest. "Human captain," he said, "I have thought about our earlier conversation. You are unusual. Most creatures in your position would have tried to run, or would have surrendered completely by now. You have done neither. Running would be pointless. Surrendering would be unacceptable. Unacceptable." Tyvos tilted his head. "That is an interesting word. What makes surrender unacceptable to you? My people have a history, High Warden. We have faced terrible enemies before. We have lost wars and won wars. We have suffered plagues that killed half our population. We have burned our own cities and rebuilt them from nothing. And through all of it, we have learned one thing. The only true defeat is giving up. Everything else is just a challenge." Tyvos studied her in silence. "I am going to make you an offer, human captain. You will come to my ship, alone, unarmed. We will speak face to face. If I find you worthy of interest, your crew will live. If I do not, you will all die." The bridge crew tensed. June's hand moved toward her console. Dohan stepped forward as if to protest. Yuna raised a hand to stop them. "I accept your offer, High Warden, but I have a condition." "You have conditions?" Tyvos sounded almost amused. "You are surrounded by warships, and you make demands?" "I do. My condition is this. You will come to my ship first, alone, unarmed. We will speak face to face here. Then I will come to your ship, and we will speak there. Equal terms." The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Tyvos's compound eyes reflected the lights of his bridge like broken mirrors. "No one has ever made such a demand of me," he said finally. "Then it is time someone did." Another pause. Then, slowly, Tyvos made that strange sound again. The laugh that was not quite a laugh. "Very well, human captain. I will come to your ship first. Prepare to receive me." The screen went black. June exhaled sharply. "Captain, you just invited an enemy commander onto our ship. If he decides to kill you, then you will activate the scuttling charges and take him with us," Yuna said calmly. "But I do not think he will. He is curious. And curiosity is a weakness we can use." She turned to face her crew. Their faces were pale but determined. They were afraid, but they were still standing. That was enough. That was always enough. The shuttle from the Valoran flagship was shaped like a black teardrop. It moved through space with silent grace and docked with the Dauntless gently, almost politely. The crew watched through the viewports as the airlock connected. Yuna stood alone in the docking bay. She had ordered everyone else to remain at their stations. This meeting would happen on her terms, and her terms meant facing the High Warden by herself. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Steam rolled out as the pressure equalized. Then Tyvos stepped through. He was even more impressive in person than on the screen. He stood nearly 3 meters tall. His forearms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. His gray skin seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. He wore no weapons, as agreed, but his body itself was a weapon. Those hands could crush metal. Those arms could tear a human apart like paper. Tyvos looked around the docking bay with obvious curiosity. His compound eyes moved across the walls, the equipment, the lights. Then they settled on Yuna. "You are smaller than I expected," he said. "You are larger than I expected," she replied. "Size is not everything. In the Empire, size is power. The strong rule the weak. It is the natural way. On Earth, we have a different saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall." Tyvos made that strange laughing sound again. "You are amusing, human captain. I will give you that. No one has spoken to me like this in centuries. They are too afraid. Fear is a waste of time." Yuna gestured toward a door. Would you like to see my ship? It is small, but it is home. Tyvos followed her through the corridors of the Dauntless. He had to bend his body to fit through the doorways, and his shoulders brushed against the walls. Everything on this ship was built for creatures half his size. It should have made him feel powerful, dominant. Instead, he felt strangely off balance. The humans they passed did not run away. They did not fall to their knees. They stood at attention, nodded respectfully, and continued with their work. One young woman actually smiled at him before turning back to her console. Your crew does not fear me, Tyvos observed. They fear you very much, Una said honestly. But they do not show it. That is not our way. What is your way? Una stopped walking. She turned to face the High Warden, looking up at him without flinching. Our way is to face our fears directly, to acknowledge them, accept them, and then move forward anyway. We call it courage. It is perhaps the only thing we truly value. They reached the observation deck, a room with large windows that showed the stars and the Valoran fleet beyond. Una had prepared 2 chairs here, though one was much larger than the other. She had asked Dohan to build it overnight. Tyvos looked at the specially made chair with surprise. You prepared for me. Of course. You are my guest. That means something to us. They sat facing each other. The stars wheeled slowly outside the windows. The Valoran destroyers hung in formation like patient predators. Tell me about your species, Tyvos said. We have records of many races, but we have never seen creatures like you before. Una thought carefully before speaking. We are from a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. We developed technology late compared to other species. We have only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. 200 years? Tyvos seemed shocked. That is nothing. The Empire has existed for 3,000 years. My own family has held power for 15 generations. Yes, we are young, but we have already done much. Una paused. Perhaps too much. What do you mean? Una looked out at the stars. Before we reached space, we fought each other. Wars that killed millions of our people. We built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We poisoned our air and water. We came very close to ending ourselves, many times. Tyvos leaned forward. This was unexpected. Most species tried to impress him with their achievements, their power, their glory. This human was telling him about failures and near disasters. Why do you tell me this? He asked. Because it is the truth. And because it explains who we are? Una met his compound eyes directly. We are survivors, High Warden. We have survived famines, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have ended us. We are still here because we refuse to give up. No matter how bad things get, no matter how hopeless the situation seems, we keep fighting. It is in our blood. Fighting whom? Each other? Everyone. Everything. Even ourselves sometimes. Una smiled slightly. We are not a peaceful species, High Warden. We are not wise or enlightened. We are stubborn and angry and determined. We break things and rebuild them. We make terrible mistakes and learn from them. We fall down and get up again. That is what we do. That is all we do. Tyvos was silent for a long moment. He had conquered species that had technology far beyond humanity's. He had crushed empires that had existed for millennia. But none of them had spoken like this. None of them had admitted weakness while somehow making it sound like strength. My grandmother survived a war on our planet, Una continued. Her city was destroyed by bombs. Fire burned everything she knew. She lost her entire family in one night. She was 14 years old. What happened to her? She walked out of the ruins. She found other survivors. They rebuilt. It took decades, but they created something new from the ashes. When she died, She was surrounded by her children and grandchildren in a beautiful home she had built with her own hands. Yuna's voice softened. She told me stories when I was young. She said that humans are like weeds. You can burn us, cut us down, poison us, but we always grow back. Tyvo stood and walked to the window. He looked out at his fleet, at the ships that had never known defeat. He had commanded these vessels for 200 years. He had broken countless enemies. He had never met anyone like this human captain. In the Empire, he said slowly, the weak submit to the strong. It is the foundation of our civilization. Those who cannot fight serve those who can. This is how we have survived for 3,000 years. And how many of your subjects are truly loyal? Yuna asked quietly. How many would fight for you if they were not afraid of you? Tyvos turned to look at her. What? My crew would die for me. Not because they fear me, but because they trust me. Not because I force them, but because we face everything together. Is that true of your empire, High Warden? If the fear disappeared tomorrow, how many would still follow you? The question hung in the air between them. Tyvos had never considered it before. He had never needed to consider it. The empire was built on power, on dominance, on the simple truth that the strong ruled. It had always worked. It would always work. Wouldn't it? You challenge everything, he said finally. That is also what we do. Yuna stood and walked to stand beside him at the window. She barely reached his lowest shoulder. I do not want war with your empire, High Warden. I do not want my people to die. But I also will not bow. I cannot bow. It goes against everything I am. Then what do you want? Yuna looked up at the stars, at the infinite darkness between them. I want to go home. I want my crew to live. And I want you to understand that there are some things in this universe that cannot be conquered. Not because they are too strong, but because they refuse to break. Tyvos looked down at the small human beside him. She should have been nothing. An insect. A toy. He could kill her with one hand before she even had time to scream. But something in her eyes stopped him. Something he had never seen before in all his centuries of conquest. Complete honesty. Complete determination. Complete refusal to submit. It was, he realized with surprise, beautiful. I will consider what you have said, Tyvo spoke quietly. Now, I believe it is time for you to visit my ship. Are you ready, Captain Yuna? Yuna straightened her uniform and lifted her chin. I was born ready, High Warden. They walked back to the docking bay together, the giant alien and the small human. Neither of them knew exactly what would happen next, but both of them knew that something had changed. The inside of the Valoran flagship was designed to terrify. Yuna understood this the moment she stepped out of the shuttle. The corridors were 30 meters high, carved from black stone that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing with pale blue fire. The air smelled like metal and old blood. Tyvos walked beside her, his forearms folded behind his back. Other Valorans lined the corridor, standing at attention. They were all huge, all gray-skinned, all watching the small human with cold compound eyes. Some of them hissed quietly as she passed. Others made sounds that might have been laughter. Yuna kept walking. She kept her back straight and her head high. She looked at everything with open curiosity, as if she were visiting a museum rather than the heart of enemy territory. The corridor opened into a massive chamber. It was the size of a sports stadium, filled with displays and trophies. Yuna stopped, her eyes moving across the collection. There were weapons from dozens of worlds, ranging from primitive swords to advanced energy rifles. There were pieces of starships, engine cores, and command consoles taken from defeated enemies. There were statues of Valoran warriors, each one commemorating a great victory. And there were chains. Hundreds of chains, hanging from the ceiling like metal vines. Each chain had a small plaque attached to it, bearing the name of a conquered species. "This is our Hall of Victories," Tyvo said. "Every species we have defeated is represented here. Every world we have claimed. Every enemy we have broken." Yuna walked slowly through the hall. She read some of the plaques. The Carthan Collective. The United Worlds of Fellows. The Dreaming Swarm of Yith. So many names. So many peoples who no longer controlled their own fate. "You have conquered many," she said. "We have conquered all who stood against us." Tyvos gestured toward a large screen on one wall. "Let me show you." The screen came to life. Images appeared, recordings from different worlds and different times. Yuna watched as Valoran fleets descended on planet after planet. She saw cities burning. She saw armies falling. She saw species kneeling in surrender, their leaders offering their worlds in exchange for their lives. Some of the recordings were violent. Very violent. Yuna saw things that would give her nightmares for years. Executions, punishments, examples made of those who resisted too long. She did not look away. She did not flinch. She watched every image with the same steady expression. Tyvos observed her carefully. Most prisoners who saw these recordings broke down in terror. They wept. They begged. They promised anything to avoid the same fate. This human simply watched. "You show no fear," Tyvo said. "Are you not horrified by what you see?" "I am horrified," Yuna admitted. "But I have seen worse." "Impossible. What could be worse than the might of the Valoran Empire?" Yuna turned to face him. "May I show you something, High Warden?" "Images from my own world?" Tyvos hesitated. This was unusual. Prisoners did not offer to share their history. They tried to hide it, to protect it, to keep some small piece of themselves secret. But this human was different. She had been different from the first moment. "Show me," he said. Yuna pulled a small device from her pocket. It connected to the screen and new images appeared. Images from Earth. Images from human history. She showed him the trenches of World War I, where millions of young men died in mud and poison gas. She showed him the concentration camps of World War II, where humans systematically murdered other humans by the millions. She showed him the nuclear explosions that ended that war, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed cities. She showed him the famines and the plagues, the genocides and the ethnic cleansings, the terrorists and the tyrants, the endless wars fought over religion and land, and nothing at all. Tyvos watched in growing disbelief. These creatures had done this to themselves, not to conquered enemies, not to rival species, to their own people. "We have done worse to ourselves than you have ever done to anyone," Yuna said quietly. "And we are still here. How?" Tyvos asked. His voice was genuinely confused. "How did you survive this?" "Because we refused to stop trying. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we destroyed something, we built something better. Every generation learned from the mistakes of the last." Yuna smiled sadly. "We are not proud of our history, High Warden. We carry shame for what we have done. But we also carry strength. The strength of survivors." She paused, then added, "This is why I do not fear you. You are powerful, yes. You are dangerous, yes. But you are not new. We have faced monsters before. We have been monsters before. We know how this works." Tyvos was silent for a long time. He looked at the human recordings, still playing on the screen. Then he looked at the Valoran recordings. His conquests. His victories. His empire. "I have conquered 43 species," he said slowly. "Every one of them broke eventually. Every one of them submitted. They had no choice." "They had a choice," Yuna replied. "They just made the wrong one." "The wrong choice?" "They chose survival. No, they chose to survive as slaves. We would choose differently. Tyvo stepped closer to her. His massive form blocked out the light. What would you choose, Captain Yuna? If I ordered my fleet to destroy your ship right now, what would you do? Yuna did not step back. She did not flinch. My engineer has reprogrammed our scuttling charges. If you try to board us, if you try to take us prisoner, I will destroy my own ship. My crew will die. I will die. And you will learn nothing about humanity. You will gain nothing. You would kill your own people? I would free them from slavery. There's a difference. Tyvo stared at her. His compound eyes reflected her image 1,000 times over. 1,000 tiny humans standing defiant in the face of impossible power. I have lived for 700 years, he said finally. I have seen countless species rise and fall. I have watched civilizations crumble and empires collapse. But I have never met anyone like you. There are billions more like me on Earth. Billions who would make the same choice. Billions who would rather die than kneel. You cannot defeat the Empire. Your technology is primitive. Your numbers are small. You have no chance in open war. Yuna nodded. That is probably true. But you cannot conquer us either. You can kill us, yes. You can destroy our world and murder every human alive. But you cannot make us submit. You cannot break us. We will fight until the last human draws their last breath, and even then, our ghosts will haunt you. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them until she was close enough to touch him. Is that what you want, High Warden? An enemy you can never truly defeat? A war that never ends? A species that will never stop resisting, no matter how many generations it takes. Tyvos looked down at her. This tiny creature, this impossible human. She was offering him something no one had ever offered before. Not surrender. Not defiance. Something else entirely. What do you want? He asked again. I want peace. But not the peace of slavery. The peace of equals. The peace of two peoples who respect each other enough to leave each other alone. The Empire does not make peace. We only make subjects. Then perhaps, Yuna said softly, it is time for the Empire to try something new. Tyvos was quiet for a very long time. The Hall of Victories surrounded them, filled with the trophies of 3,000 years of conquest. Every chain represented a broken people. Every weapon represented a defeated enemy, but there was no chain for humanity. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. I must consult with the Imperial Senate, Tyvo said finally. They will want to know about you, about your species, about what you have told me, and what will you tell them? Tyvos turned away, walking toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back at the small human standing alone in his hall of conquered peoples. I will tell them the truth, he said, that we have finally found something we cannot break. 3 days passed. The Dauntless remained surrounded by Valoran destroyers, but no one fired. No one boarded. The crew waited in tense silence, sleeping in shifts, eating little, speaking less. Yuna spent most of her time on the bridge, watching the enemy ships through the view screen. She had done everything she could. Now the decision belonged to others. Doan brought her coffee and reports. June monitored every communication channel for any sign of what was happening. Teehee moved through the ship, keeping the crew calm and focused. On the morning of the 4th day, the communication console beeped. Captain, June said, we are receiving a message from the Valoran flagship. It is High Warden Tyvos. Put him through. Tyvos appeared on the screen. He looked different somehow. Not softer, not weaker, but changed in a way that was hard to describe. His compound eyes held something that might have been respect. Captain Yuna, he said, I have spoken with the Imperial Senate. I have shared everything you showed me. Everything you told me. The discussion lasted 2 full days. Una stood very still. And what did they decide? They are divided. Some want to destroy your ship and investigate your homeworld for possible conquest. Others are intrigued by your species and wish to study you further. A few believe you should be left alone entirely. And you, High Warden? What do you believe? Tyvos paused. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before. I believe that the Empire has grown lazy. For 3,000 years, we have faced enemies who break. We have forgotten what it means to face enemies who do not. Perhaps we need to remember. He straightened his posture, all 4 arms folding behind his back in a formal gesture. The Imperial Senate has reached a decision. Your ship will be granted safe passage out of Valoran space. You will be allowed to return to your home world. No Valoran vessel will pursue you or harm you. Una let out a breath she had been holding for 4 days. Behind her, she heard Dohwan make a small sound of relief. June closed her eyes briefly. Tihi put a hand over her heart. There is a condition, Tyvos continued. Name it. You will carry a message to your people. A message from the Valoran Empire. Tyvos leaned forward slightly. We are watching you. We know you exist now. We know what you are. And we will be paying very close attention to what you do next. Is that a threat? It is a statement of fact. The Empire does not make threats, Captain. We make promises. Tyvos paused. But I will add something that is not from the Senate. Something from me personally. I am listening. In all my centuries, I have never met a species like yours. Your weakness should make you pray. Instead, it makes you something else. Something I do not have a word for. Tyvos's compound eyes seemed to glow with inner light. I hope we never go to war, Captain Una, because I am not certain we would win. The screen went black. For a moment, no one on the bridge moved. Then, Dawan let out a loud whoop of joy. June actually smiled. Tihi laughed, tears streaming down her face. Una stood in the center of the celebration, feeling a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. They had done it. They had faced the most powerful empire in the galaxy and walked away free. Navigation, she said. Plot a course for human space. Best possible speed. Yes, Captain. The Dauntless turned slowly away from the Valoran fleet. The destroyers held their positions, watching but not following. As the human ship moved toward the boundary of Valoran space, the crew gathered on the bridge to watch through the view screen. One by one, the enemy vessels disappeared behind them. The stars of Valoran territory faded into the distance. And then, finally, they were home. Or at least on their way there. Una sat in her command chair and closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother, about the stories of survival and rebuilding. She thought about all the humans who had come before her, the billions who had faced impossible odds and kept fighting anyway. Captain? Dawan's voice was gentle. Are you all right? I am tired, Una admitted. More tired than I have ever been in my life. You should rest. We have a long journey ahead. Not yet. Una opened her eyes and looked at her crew. They were gathered around her, these brave people who had trusted her with their lives. First, I want to say something. She stood and faced them all. Dohwan, who had prepared to destroy the ship on her command. June, who had kept her finger on weapons for 4 straight days. Tehi, who had held the crew together when fear threatened to break them. And all the others, the engineers and scientists and pilots who had faced death without flinching. I am proud of you, she said simply. All of you. When we crossed into Valoran space, we had nothing but each other. No weapons that could match theirs. No fleet to call for help. No hope of escape. And yet, we stood our ground. We refused to break. We showed them what humans are made of. She looked at each face in turn. The galaxy knows about us now. The Valoran Empire knows about us. And they are afraid. Not of our technology, not of our military, but of our spirit, our determination, our absolute refusal to give up. Una smiled. The High Warden said something to me on his ship. He said they had finally found something they could not break. I want you to remember that. I want you to tell your families and your friends and everyone you meet. The Valoran Empire, the most powerful force in the known galaxy, looked at humanity and saw something they could not defeat. She raised her hand in a salute. That is who we are. That is what we do. We cross into the darkness, and we do not flinch. Never forget that. The crew saluted back, their faces filled with pride and emotion. For a moment, they were not just 47 people on a small ship in the middle of space. They were humanity itself, represented in this one vessel, carrying the spirit of their entire species. Then the moment passed, and they were just tired humans again, heading home after the most terrifying experience of their lives. All right, Una said, sitting back in her chair. Everyone get some rest. Dr. Taihi, I expect a full report on everyone's mental health by tomorrow. Chief Dohan, run a complete diagnostic on the engines. And someone please find me something to eat. I am starving. The crew dispersed, laughing and talking. The tension that had filled the ship for days finally began to fade. They had survived. They had won. Una stayed on the bridge, watching the stars pass by. Somewhere behind them, Tyvos was filing his report. The Imperial Senate was debating what to do about the strange new species that had wandered into their territory. Valoran scholars were studying the recordings of human history, trying to understand creatures who had survived themselves. And somewhere ahead, Earth waited, home, the blue planet where humans had risen from animals to space travelers in just a few thousand years. The world that had survived ice ages and meteors and terrible wars, always rebuilding, always continuing, always refusing to end. Una thought about the future, about the decisions that would need to be made, about the careful diplomacy required to keep peace with an empire that could crush humanity, if it chose to. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, she would rest. Today, she would celebrate the simple fact that they were alive. The Dauntless flew on through the stars, carrying its precious human cargo toward home. Behind it, the Valoran Empire watched and waited and wondered because the humans had crossed into their space, and they had not. Flinched not even once.